Hi everyone, welcome back to FPL Moneyball, where we use data analysis to find the best players for your Fantasy Premier League teams. Today we'll be doing a Game Week 11 team selection video, and it's the last game week before we take an international break, and I'll be sharing with you my plans to activate my bench boost this game week. So let's jump right into the forwards that we'll take a look at. For me, there are 4 standout options here: Haaland, Mateta, João Pedro, and Thiago. Out of these 4 options, Thiago actually has the highest points per million at 6.2, but Haaland leads in terms of the expected goals created and expected goals involvement of 1.13. Mateta also, although he hasn't been very clinical, he does have a lot of goal opportunities. He has the second highest expected goals at 0.9. Which is pretty good amongst the forwards. And lastly, João Pedro, whose underlying stats hasn't been very good, but he does surprise managers with coming up with goals and assists, even though the opportunities are not very good from him. And he did score a goal and getting bonus points as well against the match against Tottenham last game week. So for me, these are the 4 forwards that you should own. Choosing 3 out of these forwards depending on which ones you prefer. For me, I do have 3 of them: Mateta, Haaland, and João Pedro in my team. So other forwards that look similar could be Danny Welbeck from Brighton, as well as Isidore from Sunderland. These 2 players are slightly less favorable in terms of their stats, but they do have, especially Welbeck has shown the improvement in form. And Isidore also looks like a cheap option, coming in only at 5.6 million. If you don't want to spend much money on your forwards and you want to save it for your midfielders, you can consider players like Isidore and Thiago, who provide good value at decent prices for the forward option. Next will be the forwards that are slightly less attractive. Firstly, Jarrod Bowen from West Ham, who does have very low expected goal involvement. Although he's a very proven FPL asset, West Ham and Jarrod Bowen actually haven't had the best start of the season, with the sacking of their manager Graham Potter being replaced by Nuno. Now they also have to readjust tactically, and for Bowen to get his form back, and depends on the quality of the midfield and how West Ham create chances as well. So from an attacking point of view, West Ham definitely not one of those stronger teams, and I would avoid any of their assets at the moment, given Bowen also doesn't look very attractive. Next will be Richarlison from Spurs, who has also struggled for minutes recently with the signing of Spurs. With Spurs making a couple of signings in the forward position, he also does have to rotate with other forwards such as Tel and Moani, so the minutes seem at risk for me. And despite him being quite clinical in terms of his conversion opportunities, Spurs' form hasn't been the best lately as well, so I would say avoid Spurs assets now. The other 3 forwards also don't look very impressive for me. Gyökeres, who is out injured until after the international break. Ekitike, who is actually pretty decent form, but he also does face the rotation risk in the forward position for Liverpool with Alexander Isak. And Voltemade, whose form has sort of dipped recently, despite having a strong start to the season. So next, moving on to the midfielders, much more options you can consider here. 3 standout options for me will be Semenyo, Njai, and Rice. Declan Rice, Semenyo is the top scoring forward. Although his form has started to dip recently, he did have a very strong start to the season. Although the last few game weeks he has blanked in the last few game weeks, so do keep an eye on him. And his fixtures are improving after playing a very tough games against Man City last game week. He does face an out of form Aston Villa away from home this game week, so potential for him to get some goals and assists there. He does have a very strong expected goal involvement of 0.43, which is on the higher end among the midfielders. Another player who has also very high expected goals involvement will be Njai from Everton, who plays against Who does Everton play against? They play against Fulham this game week, and Njai, who was thought to be out injured, is back in training with the squad. So likely that he does start for Everton, and so he does prove a very good option for players and managers in this team. Next will be Declan Rice from Arsenal, who is playing in a more advanced position following the injury to Odegaard. Arsenal playing with a central three midfielder position, and Declan Rice has been the top scoring defensive midfielder this season. And I'll share more about the defensive midfielders who have been surprisingly well in terms of providing value for managers in FPL this season. So there they are. The few of them highlighted on this list will be Paulinho from Spurs, Gravenberch from Liverpool, Xhaka from Sunderland, newly promoted side, and the team captain as well as Caicedo from Chelsea, who has been the standout performer for Chelsea this season. So although these players have very low expected goal involvement, maybe because they take shots from deeper positions or they start off in deeper positions, surprisingly many of these defensive midfielder assets have performed very well in FPL this season. So maybe using XG might not be the best representative of how many points, what's their point ceiling they are expected to score, but they do provide very good value for managers, and I'll continue to evaluate and look at their defensive performance as well. Maybe looking at the X goals conceded as potentially another metric to track going forward for these defensive midfielders. Other players to watch also include Tavernier, also from Bournemouth, playing with Semenyo, and Jadon Anthony from Burnley. I tend to avoid newly promoted sides such as Burnley, so don't really like having Anthony in my squad. But Tavernier has actually outscored Semenyo over the past 3 game weeks, so might be someone you could potentially switch to if he continues up his good run of form. Next will be Minte from Brighton, who plays for a very mixed Brighton side, Brighton haven't been great defensively, but do show a lot of attacking threat going forward. And Minte looks to be the one creating a lot of chances for Brighton and for Danny Welbeck to score. So he does look like an attractive option with 0.38 expected goal involvement among the highest side for the forwards for the midfielders due to his progressive play, able to make good runs into the box and good dribbling stats already this season. So potentially one to watch for me. Next will be a couple of players. Looking at the top will be Embuemo, Sa, and Enzo. And these players, I do all have them in my team. They look very strong in terms of the expected goal involvement point of view, all hovering above 0.5 XGI per 90, but they haven't been very clinical in converting their opportunities. So I'm continuing to monitor them, although their underlying stats do look very attractive for me. They also tend to be on the more expensive side. So hopefully they can actually convert some of their opportunities and score goals and assists for me this game week. Next will be those slightly less attractive, although they do have similar points per million, will be Bruno Guimaraes, Kudus, and Szoboszlai, who I'd all say avoid at the moment because waiting for their form to improve. Also, key to highlight that Liverpool will have a easier run of fixtures going forward after they play Manchester City this game week. A tough matchup for them, but after that their fixtures do improve. So I'm possibly looking to target a few Liverpool assets such as Gravenberch going forward. Next will be those players that haven't looked very impressive this season. Bruno Fernandes, Gakpo, Jack Grealish, and Pedro Neto from Chelsea. So looking at the defenders, there are a few. The top of the bunch options for me will be 3 of them. 3 out of 4 will be from Arsenal defense, Gabriel, Timber, and Calafiori. You could possibly own 3 or 2 out of these assets in your FPL team. And the other player not from Arsenal to make this list would be Gehi from Crystal Palace, who has a decent XGC stat. Crystal Palace defense have been pretty good, and he also does have some attacking contributions already this season, scoring from set pieces, so very good from him. Other cheaper options you could look at, possibly if you are running out of budget, you could look at Van der Ven from Spurs, Senesi, Rodon, and Mukele, who are all cheaper 4+ million options. On the lower side of the range, players who have dipped in form recently, Dan Burn and Chalobah from Chelsea. And lastly, players I would avoid because their defenses haven't really been very strong will be Van Dijk from Liverpool, Tarkowski from Everton, and Ruben Dias from Man City, who do look like they are improving actually. So lastly, taking a look at the goalkeepers, it doesn't change much over here. Top two goalkeepers who have Royce from Sunderland and Nick Pope. So you could possibly own Royce and then one of these two, and then the other option being Dubravka as the backup goalkeeper. Other players you could consider would be David Raya, who's plays for the strongest defense in the league, Arsenal. Although you will be limiting your other Arsenal options you can have, as you only can have 3 players in your team. So that wouldn't be the best option for me to go for Raya. But other goalkeepers you could potentially consider but don't look as attractive to me are Petrovic from Bournemouth and Vicario from Spurs. Lastly, do avoid Jordan Pickford as he has a very high expected goals conceded per 90. So this is how my team looks like this going into this game week. I do have a few Arsenal players, 2 at the back, Timber and Calafiori for Arsenal playing against Sunderland away, as well as Dan Burn playing Brentford away. And in midfield, I do have Enzo Fernandez, Semenyo, Ismaila Sarr, and Mbeumo, who all have very strong expected goal involvement stats, but haven't really been scoring a lot of points this season for me, so pretty disappointing. And I'll be sure to monitor them and looking whether I could change for more defensive midfielder positions if they continue to disappoint me in the midfield. And lastly, for forwards, as I mentioned, I do own 3 of the top 4 forwards, Mateta, Haaland, and João Pedro. Captain for me will be Haaland against Liverpool at home, possibly. I do think we stick with Haaland. Liverpool's defense hasn't looked the best this season, and City are playing at home, so still Haaland still could score against Liverpool. And on my bench, I do have Jack Grealish, Chalobah, and Senesi, and I'll be activating my bench boost this game week. So the reason why I chose this is because Chelsea do have a favourable game against Wolves at home. So I do think that players such as João Pedro and Chalobah can potential for them to get points. Bournemouth also look pretty solid at the back, and they play a very weak Aston Villa attack. So I do want to also play Senesi. And lastly, Everton face Fulham at home, so potential for Jack Grealish to pick up some XGI there as well. So looking at the Game Week 11 watch list, we do have a few players here highlighted. Minte, who has 7.83 ppm and 0.8 and 0.4 XGI per 90. As I mentioned, he makes very strong runs and also very strong dribbling stats this season. And after a relatively tough fixture this game week against Crystal Palace away, his fixtures do improve over the next 4 game weeks, with 3 out of 4 home matches against Brentford, Aston Villa and West Ham, and also playing a very weak Nottingham Forest side in game week 13 away from home. Next will be Casemiro from Manchester United, who has scored in 2 consecutive game weeks, boosting his PPM up to 7.63, and he is a defensive midfielder, so his XGI is relatively lower compared to other midfielders and forwards. Man United also have a decent run of fixtures against Everton at home and West Ham United at home as well, so potential for him to score some points there. And lastly will be Krupi from Bournemouth, who after facing Man City last game week, he also does have a decent run of form against West Ham, Aston Villa, Sunderland, and Everton. So potential for him to continue his strong run of form, and he's also proven to be on the end of quite a few opportunities, as seen in his XGI per 90 being 0.78. So that's it for my Game Week 11 team selection video. I hope you found this video insightful and interesting, and please make sure to like and subscribe for my Game Week 11 review coming on later this week. See you in the next video.